So we started in our first lecture talking about the evolution of corporate governance. We talked about how it started and where we are, the reasons, one of which was that corporate failure caused stakeholders to demand accountability, transparency, disclosures, and best practices, which would mean that any organization that was run basing on best practices, it would most likely survive. And those organizations that were run by unscrupulous businessmen or stewards, these being CEOs, that organization didn't stand a chance to survive. We looked at a funnel approach, Western countries. We looked at Enron, WorldCom, Parmalat, came to Africa, South African companies, and others. Then we came to Zimbabwe. We looked at a huge number of companies that collapsed. And most of you know that history of collapse. And then we, in our second lecture, talked about the architecture of corporate governance. What's inside? Who constitutes it? What is it about the board? And these actors in the board called non-executives and also the executives, usually the CEO and the CFO. And then we talked about their roles. What do they do? How should they do it? And we talked about the board meetings, frequency, the remuneration of non-executives and executives. So basically, we looked at corporate governance and its pillars like transparency, fairness, responsibility. Now, today we are going to look at another component of corporate governance, but because of a lot of focus that has been put into it, which is called ethics or business ethics, it is now standing on its own for the sake of emphasis. So for the sake of emphasis, ethics now is standing on its own, but it is actually a component of corporate governance, because we are saying when you are looking after somebody's business, if you are not doing it from your heart, then it means you are going to be using shenanigans and that company will collapse. And usually people who are unethical will run the business down. But if you do it embedding ethics in your processes, that business will most likely survive. So ethical business dealings is what we are now going to look at, because it is an important component of corporate governance. Now, there are these three components. We talk of law, corporate governance, and ethics. Law is codified. Law is statute. It comes from our parliament and is written down. So you have the ABCs of how to behave. If you break a law, you are taken to the cleaners. But come corporate governance, well, we have advanced in such a way that corporate governance is now written down. But only in a few cases, like in the USA and partly in Zimbabwe, corporate governance is codified, or it's part of law. But corporate governance really is by persuasion. Best practices there that have to be used, that have to be taken on board, should be by persuasion. So this should be by persuasion. And when it comes to ethics, this is more about morals, something that must come from the heart. So this is what I would call a continuum. Law being a statutory, put in black and white, and then corporate governance being more of persuasion, and ethics being something more individualistic, something from the heart. So these three work together. Now, business ethics breed corporate governance. So ethics starts from the heart, then you practice it together with others, which are called best practices. Then because you need order at corporate level, therefore this breeds law for upholding order. And law has to be codified, it has to be in black and white. No one should just imagine what's good and what's bad. It has to be written down. Therefore, law, corporate governance, and business ethics are a trinity that is inseparable. These three are totally inseparable. And they work together. So where the law ends, corporate governance takes over. And where corporate governance ends, business ethics will take over and finish the rest. So first of all, we are talking of acting as a group in terms of following law, then acting as a company, as business people, as stewards through corporate governance best practices, then individually now, acting through our ethics. Ethics are morals. The thoughts of whether something is right or wrong, it starts from an individual. You might then act ethically as a group, like in what we call business ethics, but ethics start individually, deep down. Now, there are quite a number of business practices which are considered unethical, and usually they are also illegal. For example, misleading advertising, that's very unethical, and it's also illegal because you can harm people. Misleading labeling of bottles, of packages, you can harm people. This is illegal and unethical. A poor product or service safety, harming the environment, insider trading, we've talked about this. You know information about your company, you tell other people so that they have better information and they benefit together with yourself from whatever you know. Then padding expense accounts, this is like you buy capital you have capital expenditure and then you pile it up in expenditure as if, or you take expenditures and then you put them into capex as if it's capex. It means your expenditures will be less and your profit will be more. So this is like creative accounting. And dumping flawed products on foreign markets, like what our brother Chinese do. But in many other cases, the law is unclear and all choices have elements of both right and wrong. But this starts from the individual and it cascades to the group as a whole. Now, we have an example here of an ethical dilemma. We have not yet defined ethics. We will get there shortly. But for us to understand ethics, we need to be getting in slowly with the use of examples. What would you do? You are a strategic analyst at a successful hotel enterprise that has been generating substantial excess cash flow. Your CEO instructs you to analyze the competitive structure of closely related industries to find one where you could invest more. Your analysis suggests that the highest profit opportunities are to be found in the gambling industry. You realize that it might be possible to add casinos to several of your existing hotels, lowering entry costs into the industry. However, you personally have strong moral objections to gambling. Like you are a Seventh-day Adventist, you belong to the apostolic faith or any other faith that does not allow gambling. So, should your own personal beliefs or should your own beliefs influence your recommendations to the CEO? You have done the numbers you know casinos would bring you the best revenues. Would you, because of your religion, throw aside casinos and recommend something else whose numbers or figures do not point towards getting better revenues or better business? So sometimes this is where ethics come in. So sometimes ethics will impede you from doing the right thing. Ethics can also, like in this case, it's good business to do the casino. Whatever happens with those people who are enjoying using casinos is something else. But in terms of business, you reap a lot of rewards from this. So ethics are all fair with your heart. You are asking yourself, shall I recommend this? Shall I do this or shall I not? And sometimes because of the repercussions or consequences, you want to choose what is good for the majority and what's best for your faith instead of what's best for your business. That's what might happen in some cases. So what is ethics? Ethics is the branch of philosophy that focuses on morality and the way in which moral principles are applied in everyday life. So moral principles are about what is right or wrong. So if we were to be asked, what is it about ethics? Ethics is about right or wrong. Shall I do A or shall I do B? So in ethics, you have to ask certain fundamental questions like, what is fair in this decision that I want to make? What is just and what is the right thing to do in this situation? So these are some of the questions that you ask. What's the right thing to do? Is this just? Is this fair? So ethics involve an active process of applying values, which may range from religious principles to customs and traditions. What we mean here is that usually ethics are tied to our religion. Our religion teaches us to treat everybody fairly. It teaches us to greet our elders, to greet people, to give seats to our elders. Our culture teaches us to clap hands when greeting elders, to stand up and to give seats to our elders. In a bus, stand up, give seats to elders. That's ethics. So ethics has a root from religion, from our customs and traditions. So what is business ethics? Ethics starts at a personal level in general, but then when we talk of business ethics, we are focusing on what constitutes right or wrong behavior in the world of business. Business executives have a huge responsibility to their shareholders or employees, let's call them stakeholders, to make decisions that will help their businesses to make a profit. But in doing so, business people have a responsibility to the public and themselves to maintain ethical principles. So if a mining company is going to dig around, it must remember that whatever chemicals they are using will filter through the ground into rivers, and rivers are sources of water for human beings and animals, birds. Therefore, you really need to make a real decision before you do something in business. That's why we have what is called an environmental and social impact assessment, ESIA, to determine whether whatever operation is going to take place is not going to harm the environment and people around it. So all those are components of ethics. It's ethics that determine that you should carry out a certain process like an environmental social impact assessment. So, in short, we are saying, in terms of law and ethics, they have something in common. Because if you kill someone, you have broken ethics, good ethics. You have broken the law. And then we have what is called free choice. So basically, you are encouraged, given situations, your free choice should be that which benefits the majority. The best thing to do, that which will benefit the majority. So law is your legal standard, and ethics are your social standard that starts from the social being. And then the free choice is what you have to do in a given situation. Now, we have a quadrant there, which is showing common business ethical challenges which happen on the job. And we have, the first one is conflict of interests. We talked about conflict of interest yesterday and the day before, where we are saying if there is a transaction in which you have an interest, it means you are conflicted. You must excuse yourself from that conflict. So you have to excuse yourself from that conflict. And if you don't excuse yourself, then it means you are breaking the law. Then it means you are breaking the law. And then we have honesty and integrity. We are challenged at your organizations. Issues to do with honesty. Suppose you are receipting, you are in the cash office, you are collecting funds, somebody brings US dollars, and there is an option to buy in Zimbabwe dollars. Are you one of those people? Are you one of those people who will say, no, let me swipe for you and give me those US dollars? This happens all the time. So that's also an ethical challenge. Loyalty versus truth. Sometimes you are loyal to your family and you would allow your family to transact, and you are not allowing your company to know that you are part of that family. So truth versus loyalty, loyalty versus truth. These are the challenges we are facing. Whistle blowing. Suppose somebody blows the whistle and the culprit is somebody you like. Are you going to break the information to the powers that be? Are you going to disclose illegal, immoral acts and ethical practices in your organizations when you get information? Sometimes you don't, because you are all conflicted, you are an interested party. Therefore, we do have quite a number of situations. Sometimes when you are faced with this situation where we have this kind of a slide, this kind of a lecture, what you are going to think of is that you should be very, very religious, following every bit of law, following every bit of statutes in the book, following every bit of a corporate governance principle. Then you become the best that can be, that they can be. Right, now let's look at the relationship between law and ethics. I think this we've already talked about. Ethics are moral principles, laws are codified. So something can be unethical, but legal, very legal. So we are saying law and ethics are not the same thing. The question is an act legal? Is this different from the question, is an act ethical? So the law cannot codify all ethical requirements. Therefore, an action which might be unethical may not be necessarily illegal. I will give you an example. If you are in a bus and you are sitting, it's unethical for you to continue sitting when an elder is standing there. So that act of sitting is unethical, but there is no illegality about it. So acts might be unethical, but continue to be very legal. I have given that example. So usually ethical dispositions come in to aid things that are legal, the corporate governance principles. So if you add some ethics on top, then it means you end up being a full human being, a round human being. Right. Acting responsibly to satisfy society through what is called social responsibility. Yesterday, we talked about corporate social responsibility, that which you as an organization do around yourself, around your suppliers, around your customers, around your members of staff, your executive, your board, and all the stakeholders. There is something that you must do to make society feel good, to make society happier, get better products. So, social responsibility management is acceptance of the obligation to consider profit, consumer satisfaction, and societal well-being of equal value in evaluating the firm's performance. So we are saying you have to act responsibly. For example, contributions to the overall economy, job opportunities, charitable contributions and service come because you have the heart to act responsibly. Right, so in short, through the use of this diagram, corporate social responsibility, at the center there, you are the company, and you have the business social responsibility to various stakeholders, to the general public at the top there, to your employees, investors and the financial community, to customers, to government, to your board, to your executives, to anybody, even to your own competition. You cannot compete while lying. For example, you say, we have found a cure for a certain disease, and yet there is another company that is selling some medication that says just eases or reduces pain of that disease, yet you are lying to say our medicine cures that particular disease. So you are harming your competition. You need to be truthful in business. Right, so responsibility to the public. So now here we are just splitting, expanding public health issues, protecting the environment because human beings live on the environment, recycling to protect your environment where you live. Now, we then come to the issue we talked about yesterday. I think you saw that article by Milton Friedman, 1970, which says the social responsibility of business is to increase profits. Now, there is an ethical issue there. Shall we just increase profits at all costs? Or is profits about being mindful of certain other necessities, certain other things that a company needs to do? So when your emphasis is on Milton Friedman, where social responsibility of your business is just to make profit, you are doing what is called the single bottom line principle, which focuses just on profits for shareholders. Your emphasis is just profit, profit, profit. 1P, also called the single bottom line. Yesterday, I explained the word bottom line. The word bottom line, when you look at your income statement, at the top we have your income, less expenses, less what, then you get your profit, net profit. That's your bottom line. So single bottom line, you're just focusing on profit. And I am very fond of this question because as managers, once you pierce the corporate veil and you get up there, are you going to focus on 1P, or you are going to focus on other P's? Now we come to another argument from Elkington, triple bottom line. Now, the triple bottom line emphasizes that while you may have that third P called profit or wealth for shareholders and benefits to other stakeholders, there are also other P's like people. While making your profit, do things that will benefit society, and we are talking of people. employment creation, do roads, do deep tanks in the rural areas, build schools. That's the second P. Then the third P is planet, the environment where you are operating from, or place. When you dig around for when you are, at an artisanal miner, like at the university farm there, quite a lot of artisanal miners who have licenses to mine. They have claims. But once they dig a hole and they no longer get what they thought they would get, they just leave and go to another point. But look, university cattle are falling into those pits, and some of the pits are very, very deep. You can't even lift the cattle when they fall into those pits. So we are saying you need also to care for the environment. If you are extracting something from from underground, after the extraction, reclaim the environment for posterity. Reclaim the environment for posterity. Then I have a few slides there which explain what profit stands for. So profit is an economic measure. One of the things that profit stands for is income, which goes into the pockets of people, job growth, establishment sizes, employment by sector. In an exam setting, I expect you to explain what profit means. When you explain profit, then you explain the importance of profit in any organization. Environmental measures, this is for planet. That is just about avoiding dangerous chemicals, degradation of the environment caused by your activities on it, hazardous waste, change in land use not authorized, things like that. Those are the things that you need to take care of when you focus on your planet. Then people, yes, like employment also of female labor, when we're focusing on males, and the improvement of household incomes, reduction of poverty, reduction of crimes, because people are now employed and are focusing on their professions. Those are the social measures. So social is about society, it's about people. So you also have your responsibilities to your customers, that they need safety of products. They have to be well informed of your products, and they must have a right to choose. Are you going to eat a chicken slice or a chicken in? Okay, when they advertise, they must advertise ethically and truthfully so that you make the right choice. The right to be heard. Your customers must be heard. So some organizations will have a suggestion box or a book where you write your comments. They have a right to be heard. And responsibilities to employees, this is a repetition. To investors and the financial community, yes, you need to be able to make profits to be able to pay back. And you have to do that ethically and not just to swindle people so that you are able to then pay back those investors or the financial community for the debt. Now, you could have a typical exam question like, identify and explain corporate responsibilities of a business to society, citing examples. So what we are basically saying here is that you need to identify who society is, like what we have done here. And you can even go beyond. Apart from the general public, you and me, the employees of the company, the customers, the investors, financial community, these are the banks, investors, these are the shareholders. We also have suppliers. They are interested in the longevity of this organization because they want to be paid back. Competitors also have a stake here. Competition helps in bringing about quality products. Competition is healthy to both companies. You don't have to sleep. Otherwise, your products will not be bought. Even the customers themselves, they want to have a good choice of good products. So in this case, you are identifying your stakeholders who need to benefit from this business. Employees, the executive, board members, society. We are talking of customers, suppliers, and then you give us what they expect from the business. If you do it according to the structure that I told you, you can reap quite a lot of rewards here. Introduction, definition of terms, maybe corporate responsibility is the term that you will define here. If in the body of the assignment or a test, exam, question, or assignment, you know there are terms that are going to be used, you may want to define them even if they are not in your question, in the wording of the question. So introduction and maybe definition of terms, and then you have subheadings for your body. In one examination, one of my students wrote body, and then the subheadings. You don't have to write body. It's you who knows that this is the body, but you now go to answer the question, splitting the various stakeholders there, who should benefit. Now, we have been talking about ethics. Like any other genre in business, we have theories around ethics. We have theories around ethics, and we'll focus on 3 relevant ethical theories. Now, the first theory is called Deontology. My students, never enter your examination without knowing these theories. And also, we are saying corporate governance and business ethics is for appreciation. Therefore, we don't bombard you with too much data and too much detail, because we want you to appreciate what corporate governance is. Like in your case, you are doing data analytics, and those who are doing corporate governance, we are saying there is need for you to have that appreciation. And now theories make people appreciate better whatever we are dealing with. So when you look at ethics, there are 3 theories. The first one is called Deontology. So this is a practice, a philosophical practice of defining and adhering to an absolute set of standards by which ethical behavior can be measured. So we are saying this focuses on ethical standards. For example, if you look at the 10 Commandments, if you are a Christian, that's your set of standards. So deontology encourages that you must follow those written down standards. If you are an accountant, for example, you always write those procedures, controls, and following those is being deontological. That's ethical. If you are an accountant who breaches those controls that you have put in place, it means you are doing something that is unethical. Sometimes these are not written down, standards or controls. Like in the village, you know you must give those stools, those benches to the elderly. You can sit on the floor, you can sit on the other, anywhere else. You can look for a brick to sit on. So these may not be written down standards, but society expects you to follow them. You are being deontological. But in most cases, like in exam settings, you are given situations where these things are written down and have to be followed. So it tries to define universal duties that serve as moral guides to decision making. So to make a decision, you ask yourself, what do the standards say? What do the provisions say? What do the processes say? One after, that kind of, that's what you ask yourself, given a situation. So deontology is about set standards. Like your all laws are set standards, so you have to follow them. You can't kill somebody because the law says thou shalt not kill. Even at church, we have a commandment, you don't have to kill. So those are the set standards. So those set standards are part of universal duties that you have to be following. So given a situation, you ask yourself, what do standards say? So if they say don't do this, you don't do it. If you do it, you are in breach of your ethics. So in deontology, a person fulfills absolute moral duties, regardless of whether good comes from the actions or not. A person decides upon actions by asking if a particular action is morally right or wrong. The act of carrying out that duty is important rather than the consequences of the act. This is one characteristic of deontology which makes it different from the other principles or other theories or models, where you just follow what you are told to follow, even if it disadvantages another person. Like, let me give, for example, you are a police officer, there is a riot in South Africa, you are told, if you give an instruction to a looter and that looter does not follow, shoot. If that's the instruction that you are given, you don't care about whether there will be a funeral because you have shot at somebody. What you simply do is to follow the instruction. You follow the standards. Looters must be shot. Looters must be arrested. Don't care about, somebody, maybe a 25-year-old first giver of birth goes out there to want to loot milk to go and give the child. Enforcement agents will just have to follow the law. If you have to shoot, you shoot. If you have to arrest, you arrest. You don't care about what's going to happen to the child who has been left behind at home by this. So you don't worry about the consequences. Consequences are not important. What's important in this situation is just following standards set. So you will find out that other theories will look at consequences. This one doesn't look at the consequences, just looks at compliance. So deontology is about compliance, following rules, following regulations. Don't worry about the consequences. Then we have what is called the rights model. If I'm going to write about the rights model, I might call it more like the political model. Because this rights model talks a lot about, things that are more like inclined to politics. So the rights model analyzes ethical issues by focusing on any action's impact on human rights. Under this model, human rights are the rights all people have. So this one focuses on rights, and we are talking of rights maybe that have been written down, rights that are there, that are known by everybody. So an action that maximizes respect for human rights and minimizes their violation is morally correct. So what you want to do is to uphold human rights. We are going to explain further the kind of rights we are focusing, we are going to give as examples. So when encountering ethical dilemmas, that which I said starts from the heart. A person applying the rights model selects the action that minimizes the violation of stakeholders' rights. You will find in certain jurisdictions or certain countries, rights are breached. So what maximizes the breach is what happens than minimizes violation of those rights. So your students who are learning, we are saying what is ethical using the rights model is to make sure that you minimize breach of rights, but maximize upholding of human rights. You must uphold human rights, you know. And we break this into two because of the nature of those rights. So the two necessities to be fully human are freedom and well-being. And there are two categories there. We have the rights of liberty. This is more like political rights. Then the rights of well-being, these are biological rights. Right to own a house, eat, have food, employment. Right to belong to, a right to have family. These are more biological. So we will now expand this. Now, in terms of rights of liberty, which I said, these are more like political rights. We have a right to privacy or privacy. No one should breach that. We have rights of privacy. We have a right of free consent. Now, free consent simply means, suppose you are carrying out a research. Suppose you are carrying out a research. You first of all have to inform whoever is going to respond to say, you have a right not to respond to my questionnaire or interview. You have free consent to say yes or to say no. You have a right to refuse to answer some of the questions. It's your right. It's called free consent. Next semester, those who are doing strategic management, you will be using the same free consent when you are going out to collect data. And those who are doing data analytics, you will be doing that in your 2-2. So that is the right of free consent. So everybody is ethically disposed to deciding whether they want to answer your questions or not. Then we have a right to free speech. Now, things to do with ethics have sort of some limits. For example, when we say freedom of speech, it is different from freedom after speech. Because suppose you say something that is illegal, something that is incriminating, and then you hide behind free speech, freedom of speech. That is illegal, and that is also unethical. Right? So, freedom of speech and free speech, same thing. You need to, first of all, make sure that what you are saying is legal, and you leave out those illegal things that can take you to the cleaners. So no freedom after speech. First, you must have freedom of speech, yes, to say things that are not illegal. So you have a right to liberty, a right to do that, to give free speech. Then freedom of conscience, this is about joining a church of your choice. This is about joining a political party of your choice. If you Google freedom of conscience and all these things that we are talking about, there is clarity on those issues. So freedom of conscience is about joining an organization of your choice. It can be a group in your class. I'm going to give you an assignment, so you decide which group you want to join. Well, sometimes because we want to order, we might allocate you a group. because some people might run away from some of you because of what you know, and you may not want to belong to a group where somebody is there. But you have a freedom of conscience. You can belong to a group that you want. You can belong to a political party you want. You can belong to a church you want. So this is freedom of conscience. So this is freedom of conscience. Then right to life. Right to life versus suppose I dismember you from this earth. It means I kill you. I take away the right to life that you have. So every human being has a right to life. So these are called rights of liberty. Under rights model, right of liberty, you have right to life, freedom of conscience, freedom, free speech, free consent, privacy. So in an examination setting, I am not teaching you to claim, I am teaching you to understand. What you do when you get into the make sure you understand about 3 of these. Make sure you understand these 3. Then the rights of well-being, these are like biological rights. When you are writing some short notes in brackets, you must say biological rights so that you quickly remember those rights, biological issues that will make you a human being, like employment. You need employment. You need employment to be able to enjoy life. You need food, you need housing, you need education. These are biological rights. These are the biological rights that we are talking about. So we are saying we have deontology, which talks about set standards. A breach of those standards, you have done something unethical. The consequences don't matter. Then when it comes to the rights model, we are talking of the rights that people have. And these are in 2 groups, rights of liberty, rights of well-being. Then finally, we talk about this theory that I like a lot called utilitarianism. My students have had a problem to pronounce the word utilitarianism. This one comes from maybe the word utility, which is something useful. In utilitarianism, well, this is an approach to establishing ethical standards based on the consequences of an action. This is versus deontology. In deontology, you are looking at set standards. You just have to follow them. Don't worry about the consequences. But this one doesn't care about those set standards. It cares about consequences. Why this is important? Because the pain that must then come after the decisions you make may be very fatal to people. So utilitarianism emphasizes on consequences. So in an ethical dilemma, a person selects the action that brings about the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. So the model determines the correctness or the good ethical disposition of a decision by the social benefits that must go to the biggest, greatest number of people. I will give an example, controversial though it may be, when it comes to the land reform in Zimbabwe. It is said that there were 4,000 whites occupying the arable land, the best land in Zimbabwe. Now, the 4,000, that land was taken in from starting from 2000 and given to, the indigenous Zimbabweans. And it is said that about 360,000 families benefited. So for purposes of utilitarianism, that would be a good example. Let's not talk about other things that people write about, talk about. We just want to focus on just that act of taking something from 4,000 and giving it to 360,000. That is what is more, it was more utilitarian in nature. So that's what utilitarianism talks about, that you benefit the majority and you may leave the minority crying. So the consequences are more important. The consequences are more important. You can, in an exam setting, get in there with your own examples, right? You must get in there with your examples. I will give you another example. Last year, when COVID was at its worst, students were made to close. That was in October. Students left. But because we wanted to save the majority of students, we decided to have just 1,000 something here at CAT, and the majority were at home where they could practice social distance and things like that. So that's a good example of utilitarianism. You are saving the majority, they are at home, they are doing online lectures, and here at CAT we just had to bring in just 1,000. And when we discovered also that there were one or two of the students who had contracted COVID, and asked them to go home, where they could get maximum, avoid maximum exposure, get benefits of avoiding that COVID. So you have your own examples. I think you are typing those examples, and we'll discuss those examples at the end of this lecture. So I said basically in the exam, these are the typical questions that can be asked. Now, once you are asked a question on these theories of business ethics, you must be having some, good examples. Remember what the theories are. I will not give you the theories. You must remember what they are, then write something about them, give examples that clarify what you know about them. Right? I will not ask you a question like, to say, can you explain the stages of applying the rights model? No, I will not do that. That will be like you are undergrads who can cram. I want you to know and understand. So this slide is just for you to understand. And it applies to almost like the other two theories. Suppose you want to apply the rights model. These are the things that you do. In your heart, you ask yourself, you identify the facts that are there. Identify the ethical issues. They identify alternative courses of action. Identify the stakeholders who are affected. Are they a few or they are in the majority? Determine to which extent each alternative respects the dignity and the fundamental rights of stakeholders or violates their rights. Choose the alternative that maximizes the dignity of stakeholders and minimize the violation of their rights. So this is about the rights model. We are just saying these are some of the things you do. Sometimes you use shorter stages or steps. So, but don't cram this. In one examination, I was surprised. There was a student who had gone all the way out to cram this, and he had to regurgitate this. And I was very much surprised. Yes, you get marks, but this is not what we expect in an exam. We don't want people who cram. We want people who know and understand and apply. So don't cram this, please, please, please. Then utilitarianism is the same. You are identifying your facts. You know it's utilitarianism. You are going to talk about greatest benefit to the greatest number of people. So you are asking yourself, What are the facts here? Ethical issues, alternative courses of action. Who are the stakeholders? You know, you calculate the cost and benefits. So where you lose more, you avoid that. You take where you get benefit more. So this is a theory of more benefits and less expenses or less losses, less pain. Right. You might get an exam question that will be situational or it's a case study. Like what I'm going to read here, what would you do? A secretary who has worked for your corporation for 15 years is involved in a car accident in which she permanently loses the use of her right hand. Thus, she can no longer effectively type. She is a typist, a secretary. She can't file. She can't perform many of other functions she used to previously do. Your corporation has a very tight budget and does not have sufficient funds to pay for an additional secretary without reallocating budget items. The injured secretary has been very loyal to your corporation and you have been very satisfied with her work and dedication. She wants to stay at her job. So there are many issues here to decide on, many ethical issues. Moreover, she does not believe that she could find other employment at this time because of the injuries that she has sustained. Right. The question is, should your corporation fire her, lay her off with compensation, or find a way to retain her? In resolving this dilemma, apply 1, utilitarianism, the rights model, deontology, or any other opinion that you might have. Right? But usually in exams, your opinions don't matter much. Exams want to test your understanding of content that was taught. But of course, when you completely forget and you just have an idea, you can then profile your opinions. But where the theories are, where content is, please take that content on board, take those theories, use those theories. Now, in terms of utilitarianism, now I want to open this to debate. Anyone who can say something, what do you think we can do?
Can I try?
Yes.
All right. According to utilitarianism, maybe because we're considering the greatest good that comes out for the greatest number of people, but because she's one person and the organization has got more people, I think it would be good to lay her off, and considering the number of duties she's able to do. Utilitarianism. But again, using utilitarianism, we can also look at the fact that in terms of it being good to her, how can we quantify that goodness? Because we're also hurting her. So, okay, maybe I'm deviating, but that's how I would just have looked at it.
Right. So, no, that is a very good proposition. The first one that you gave is so clear. We are talking of one person versus a huge number. And this company is facing difficulties. So for the company to employ another person, whilst also this person is there, and also for this company to employ another person and give benefits to this one, that might mean an extra person who was not budgeted for. Therefore, under utilitarianism, where you want to give the largest benefit to the biggest benefit to the majority, you would, lay off this lady, give her a pension, let her go, and continue with the rest, the majority. That's utilitarianism. Now, Under the rights model, what do you think you can do? By the way, the rights model is two parts: the right to life, the right to liberty. So you must tell us which one we are using here under the rights model, right to life or rights to liberty. And then you explain.
Yes, Prof.
Yes, Nyenge?
My thought process is that under the rights model, we're looking at the rights of well-being because there's an issue of employment, which will then affect her food, her housing, her children's education and all. But then, still under this model, in respecting her human rights, would make sure that she is paid her benefits in full and timely, so that she can still be able to accommodate her other needs like her food, her house.
Yes. So this one is a right to well-being. She should get the benefits so that she can get food and shelter and possibly even employment. Are we really saying this company can't fit here somewhere where we don't need a person using both hands, you know? So in an exam setting, you just try to squeeze some proposition like the company should definitely find a place for her so that she is useful and she benefits rather than to let her go. You know, you can imagine in Zimbabwe, for how long are you going to survive with what we are calling a pension or your benefits? There can be inflation tomorrow or next year, and it wipes away all the benefits, and you are struggling. And people will be pointing fingers to say, this guy, this lady used to work for that company, and the company did this. So that might be unethical. Then in terms of deontology, what is your proposition? Anyone? Gondoza, what do you think? Yes, Mapako?
Yeah, in my thinking, using the deontology, we are saying in any event there are statutes, regulations that are there that deals with these situations in terms of incidences or accidents that may occur in a workplace and how those should be handled. So in my view, there could be an assessment in terms to assess the level of damage. If it then falls within the parameters to say if someone is damaged to this level, therefore there has to be termination in that regard. Therefore, the termination can be done because we are saying procedures laid out standards is what has to be followed. But if then an assessment is done to then say the level of damage is also to this level, it doesn't warrant the person to be retrenched or laid off. Therefore, it means mechanism to accommodate either at the current job or assigned within should be done. That's my thinking.
No, that is a very good proposition, Mapako. We are saying in terms of deontology, we are following set standards. We are following policy. Every organization, or rather, let me say, organizations usually have a policy on injury at work. They will take that policy and read it and apply what it says. If the injury of this lady is beyond redemption, beyond taking her back, then it means the police must have the ABCs of what to do next. And let's not forget that there is NASA, that can compensate this lady. Then let's not forget there is pension from this organization. It must have a pension house, right? And then also there is, issues to do with compassion. This lady might have leave days and many other things that she might get. In fact, if the company is good enough, it might actually build a house for this lady to let her go and be more comfortable, because we are saying the rights of well-being focus on your food, your shelter, your education for your children, your employment, right? In some organizations, in terms of deontology, what they will do is, if it is a standard set, they would take maybe the son of this lady or the daughter to say, you are replacing your mother, but make sure that once you start earning, you are looking after your mother. The mother will get all benefits, but then a child is employed in a place. It has happened quite a lot. It has happened quite a lot in most organizations. So that's about deontology. You just go back to your set standards, your policies, your procedures, whatever you've written down, that will tell you, that will guide you. Right, thank you very much. That was very insightful. Now let's go back to our presentation. So a question like this would give you, suppose 20 marks, yes? You would get 20 marks. Now, in allocation of the marks, the rights model will earn more marks because it is then split into two parts and it has certain things that fall under them. So maybe utilitarianism will get 6, deontology 6, and the rights model will get 8, and that's 20 marks. Now the other 5 marks, if it's a 25-mark question, will be, listen to what I do. For just writing an introduction, I will give you 2 marks. For writing a conclusion, I will give you 2 marks. And for just showing that your language is okay and you are writing things that are legible, I will give you another mark. Just 5 marks for following, a good setup. So make sure, if you are going to answer 5 questions, you have 23 marks for just writing properly, neatly, writing an introduction, a conclusion, and what. So you get 20 marks, and you'll be left with just 30 to pass the exam. So I have never taught anybody who fails an exam, because people that I've taught before just listen to the advice I give them. So follow those steps. Now, many companies are coming up with what are called codes of business ethics. It's a booklet that spells out the things that are expected from you. If you are a chemist, yes, chemists have their codes of ethics, doctors, law enforcement agents. Like if a policeman is arresting you, you will say, Mr. So-so, I'm arresting you for this. You have a right to remain silent. Whatever you say will be used against you in a court of law, something like that. So this comes from their codes. They are also not supposed to beat you up. You have a right not to be beaten up, and it's in their codes, things like that. So librarians, physicians, here at CAT, we have come up with our own code of business ethics. Most organizations have a code of conduct. It is different from a code of business ethics, because a code of conduct is a legal document, whereas this one is not. A code of conduct will say starting time is 8 a.m., knock-off time maybe is 5 p.m. If you come late, 1 hour late, this is the punishment. If you fight at work, punishment is disciplinary action or suspension or what. Whereas in a code of business ethics, you don't have suspensions or what. You are just reminded of the best things, how best you care yourself, how best you execute your duties, what is expected by society. Those things from the heart, from moral point of view. So that's a code of ethics. Now, the Public Entities Corporate Governance Act, which I'm going to talk about, emphasizes on the issues of a code of business ethics. It emphasizes on a code of business ethics. And that code of business ethics must be on the website of the company so that people will read about it from there. And they will question certain motives or certain actions of the employees of the company if they are in breach of those ethics. And I want to challenge you to go to your company, check from your website, is the code of ethics there? If also there is a code of conduct, are you aware of those things that you have to follow? Because deontology says you must know those set standards, that you start work at 8, knock off at 5. You don't beat another person. You don't do ABC, right? So I want you to check and go through those provisions, especially those for the code of ethics or code of business ethics. So what we are basically saying is major trends, companies are having to come up with those ethics, to codify them, to remind people. It's a reminder. Because sometimes if you have to do these things of the heart, the ethics, ethical dispositions, without somewhere as a reference point, sometimes you get lost and you just focus on those things that are written down from the standard side, forgetting about ethical side. So ethics are also now being written down to improve your understanding of what you have to do. So we will stop here for this lecture. And now let's focus on, I want to talk about your assignments. I am going to put some 2 assignments through your portal. These are the ones that you are going to write. Now, some students have asked me in the past, how long should an assignment be? How long should a response be in an exam? I come from an accounting background, and corporate governance is from an accounting background. We don't expect people to write acres and acres of space, acres and acres of text. Why? Because sometimes they will end up replicating things, repetition and repetition. That's why I emphasize that I want people to sectionalize their work, to put their work under subheadings. That will stop you from just regurgitating some work, repeating it and what. So I have no answer to a question like what would be the length. But just as a guide for assignments, general assignments, I have seen something like a minimum of, 3 pages. As a guide, just 3 pages to about 5, 6. That's a lot if it's typed. That's a lot. And when we also do plagiarism checks, I do plagiarism checks. I will throw your work in the plagiarism software. Then if I pick that you were trying to fool me or cheat yourself, then I'll ask you to do another assignment. And for that other assignment, your maximum mark is 50. So please don't cheat. And also don't do copy-paste. I know you are doing copy-paste a lot. You must use your own words so that the plagiarism software won't pick. And also when you are writing assignments, be academic. You must cite your sources according to this. And you must tell us where you are picking the text in brackets at the end of the sentence. So you must cite your sources in the text. Sometimes we need to give it verbatim, in which case you put some quotes. But where you quote, you must put a page number. Where you put direct quotes, you must put page number in the source. Sifile 2020, then you put a colon and page 19, if that's where you picked the quote. So make sure you are listening to what I'm saying, and I think you are jotting down something. If you forget, you can still ask me. Now, your second assignment is going to be an assignment on the Public Entities Corporate Governance Act. I don't teach that act. Why? Because I want students to understand it better through research. It is something that is easy to understand. And now here is how students do it. If you are five, like let's say if you are 5 in your group, the group leader will divide the act into like sections. We will say from section 1 to section so it is this, you are doing it from so section. So that ensures that all the students have a part to play. So if you are 8, it means smaller sections, but make sure that even if somebody has a particular section where they are picking the things we want in the response or answer, make sure that you also read through and understand the act, because I am fond of this act and I usually ask exam questions. If you look at past exam papers, I am asking students about their knowledge of PEGA. I will say something like, may you cite any 5 provisions of PEGA that have to be followed by state-owned enterprises. It's so easy, right? Some of the provisions are every state-owned enterprise must hold an annual general meeting. So it's held once every year. Every state-owned enterprise must be audited, and the audit report must be tabled in the AGM. They must hold quarterly meetings. That's standard. And also the CEO and his executives must be evaluated, the executive evaluation, and also board members themselves must be evaluated annually. Evaluation here is to say, how has the chairman performed his duties? You have a form in which you are ticking, you are choosing, like there is 1, 2, 3, up to 5. Then the questions will be like, the chairman chaired fairly. Then you tick is from 1 to 5, you choose. So everybody must rate the chairman. Then everybody must rate each and every other board member. Then the ratings are then collected, and you now come up with a position to say, board member so-so needs retraining. Board member so-so is not performing well. You need to improve on ABC. So it is meant to improve performance of board members. It's not like a witch hunt. And usually it has been difficult to fire board members because of the way they are appointed. Therefore, you can actually do something to improve their performance rather than to chuck them off the board through evaluation. So it's meant to improve them. So there are quite a lot of things that are there. Now, I will give you guidelines of how to answer this second question, which is the group work on the Public Entities Corporate Governance Act, which is the code for state-owned enterprises in Zimbabwe. So it is just summarized. Now, I once gave students this assignment. They would do copy and paste. They just Google the act. Actually, I also put it on the portal. So they were copying the whole section. They were copying the whole section, right? So you don't do that. You just type it as phrase. What are the expectations? Annual general meeting, and what is its importance? Importance. What are AGMs for? But also in the Act is articulated. Then quarterly meetings, you have identified that one. Then what is its importance? You know, meetings are there to update board members and also to pass resolutions, you know, to assist management to do ABC. CEO evaluation or evaluation of board members is meant to improve their performance. It's not a witch hunt. Audits are meant to pick those issues, things not being done well, and it's meant to improve performance of an organization. So something like that. So we are saying, I will send the assignment and put the guides of how to do your template, where you fill in what you want, the answers. So as you are doing these assignments, do them seriously. I've had a problem with your students where sometimes I don't see your assignments 2 weeks before you are going for your exams, when we are supposed to be handing in marks. So all of you should be able to send me their work. And we are expecting the work to be sent through the portal. So to show that you are registered. So please make an effort to register. And then you receive all the benefits, like you are sending work through your portal, you are seeing instructions through portal and things like that. So now I want to congratulate you for going through this work. I can say we have gone through your module. What's left is for you now to slowly go through a module, lecture by lecture, to understand. Now, can we have, do we have anyone with a question? I think it's faster to shout, if you can shout.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, Taurai.
Fine. Kumro registration in over really, because some of us are still not yet registered.
Yeah. By the way, how much are you paying to register? What's the minimum?
It's 300.
It's 300.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think because Pandakainda portal, just to check, it was surprising that the majority of you, maybe 80% of you, are not registered as we speak. And, you know, if you don't register now, it might be very difficult. So maybe what I might do is to ask for a lowering of the minimum threshold so that the majority of you can register. We lower it, say, to 200 USD equivalent at interbank rate. And please, if we do that, make sure you register in your numbers so that you get all the benefits. Right? So, yes, students are still registering. But once I ask for that one, can the class rep just remind me tomorrow so that I can ask our deputy registrar academic to ask ICT to reduce the level of registration fees?
So we will do that first thing in the morning tomorrow, Prof.
Yes, and also I've noted, like Jessica is saying, that some students have paid fees, but you know, and they are reflecting on the portal, but they are not. The system is not allowing them to register. So also remind me about that. I will check with the ICT what the problem is, because what I know is that registration has not been closed. So just remind me tomorrow to do those two things to make sure those who have paid the minimum are allowed to register, and also to lower the minimum to 200 to ensure that the majority register. But those with 300 and above, pay what you have. I know most of you munoita zvokungwavha, so you'll be spending money. Just pay your full fees if you have it. Okay, so I think we'll be communicating through the portal from now onwards. And I want to wish you well in your studies. May I know, can someone shout, especially the class reps? Do we have people from strategic management in this lecture? Can someone just shout?
Yes, we do, sir.
That is good. Why? Because I noted that some of your, weekend lectures stretch into end of August, and that will disadvantage you. So if you have attended these lectures, it's good for you. I'm going to organize again the other groups to, I think we'll have another set of lectures starting on the 28th of July. So those ones will be also done like around 5:30. It's an advantage to you students rather than the weekend lectures. Yes, the weekend lectures are also good, but look at it, you do it on a Saturday and a Sunday. You leave Monday to Friday, you're not doing anything, then another, But if you are just doing it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you finish off, you are resting, you have done away with corporate governance, you are looking for other, modules. That would be much better. So I think I will persuade some of you, those who did not attend this lecture, to also attend the one for the 28th of July. But those who want to re-attend are also free to re-attend. If you want any lecture, you can re-attend, maybe just to understand better. Thank you very much. Exam tips, is it too early for that? Well, we'll cross the bridge when we get there. So for now, as we were doing tutorials on the way, I want to encourage you never to fear. This is an appreciation course, and most of you do very well, actually. You come up with distinctions. So thank you very much. I want to, if you want to download the recordings, they are downloadable. I actually downloaded some. So for today, the presentation will be downloadable maybe end of day tomorrow or on Friday. So the system will be packaging it. You want the rights to download? Okay, I will check tomorrow whether because I thought anybody who is registered had rights to download.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.